Hello everyone, this is the CircuitPython weekly meeting for Monday, June 23rd, 2025. It's the time of the week when we all get together to talk about all things CircuitPython. I'm Dan, and I'm sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. CircuitPython is a version of Python designed to run on tiny computers called microcontrollers. CircuitPython development is primarily sponsored by Adafruit, so if you want to support Adafruit and CircuitPython, consider purchasing hardware from Adafruit.com. This meeting is hosted on the Adafruit Discord server. You can join anytime by going to adafru.it/discord. We hold the meeting in the CircuitPython voice channel and the hashtag CircuitPython dev text channel. And I'm going to adjust my microphone here for a second, because I'm flat topping. Okay, that's a little better. This meeting typically happens on Mondays at 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time, except when it coincides with the U.S. holiday. In the notes doc associated with the meeting, which I'll talk about in a minute, there's a link to a calendar you can view online or add to your favorite calendar app. We also send notifications about upcoming meetings via Discord. If you would like to receive these notifications, ask us to add you to the CircuitPythonistas Discord role. As I mentioned, there's a shared notes document. Right now it's a Google Doc that accompanies the meeting and recording. You can contribute to this document beforehand. The final notes document includes timestamps to go along with the video, so you can use the doc to skip around and view the parts of the meeting that interest you the most. The meeting tends to run 30 to 60 minutes. After each meeting, we post a link for the next meeting's notes document to the CircuitPython dev channel on the Adafruit Discord. Check the pinned messages in that channel to find the latest notes doc, so you can add your notes for the following meeting. If you wish to participate but cannot attend, you can leave hug reports and status updates in the document for us to read during the meeting. This meeting is held in 5 parts. I'll go over the parts as we get to them. So with that, I will start with community news. Take a timestamp. Community news comes from the weekly Python for Microcontrollers newsletter, which goes out via email on Monday mornings. This particular week, the newsletter was skipped, and so what I did instead was include a few items from last week's newsletter that were not already included in last week's community news in the last meeting, but I thought were still interesting. So I'll start with those. First item is get started with the new Python installation manager. The soon-to-be official tool for managing Python installations on Windows, the new installation manager picks up where the Py, that's just the py launcher, left off to help you manage the tangle of Python installations on your machine. And there's a link to an InfoWorld article about that, which is probably going to be interesting. Another very interesting item is about an upcoming documentary film, From a Side Project in Amsterdam to Powering AI at the World's Biggest Companies. This is the story of Python, featuring Guido van Rossum, Travis Oliphant, Barry Warsaw, and many more. Our upcoming full-length documentary traces Python's slow but steady rise, its community-driven evolution, and the language's impact on, well, everything. See the trailer now, and there's a link in the notes document to the trailer on YouTube. And I just want to now mention that these items came from the Python and Microcontrollers weekly newsletter, which is a CircuitPython community-run newsletter that's emailed every Monday. The complete archives are at adafruitdaily.com. You can read about the newsletter highlights the latest Python and hardware-related news from around the web. We'd love to get contributions from you to the newsletter. You can email cpnews@adafruit.com with a link, hashtag CircuitPython, or tag @engineer on Blue Sky, Mastodon, or X, or open a PR on GitHub in the CircuitPython weekly newsletter repo in the Adafruit organization. Thanks to Ann for working on the newsletter on a weekly basis. And now we'll move on to the next major section of the meeting, and I'll take a timestamp. This section is the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka. This is a quantitative overview of the entire project. It gives us a chance to look at the health of the project separate from our status updates. We'll talk about the project overall and then separately discuss the core, the libraries, and Blinka. So first of all, overall, in the past week, there were 21 pull requests merged by 10 authors. A couple of new names I may or may not have seen before are EJG Moorington and FK Sov. I think it may be SK Sov was also last week. And those 10 pull requests were reviewed by 8 reviewers. There were 11 issues closed by 9 people and 9 issues opened by 9 people. So now for the core, let me tell you about that. CircuitPython core, there were 8 pull requests merged by 4 authors, and there were 4 reviewers of those pull requests. Right now we have 22 open pull requests. I think I just closed one, so we probably have 21 now. And in the past week, there were 6 issues closed by 5 people and 2 opened by 2 people. There are right now 774 open issues on the CircuitPython repo. We're never going to close all of those. Some of them are long-term and aspirational. But there are a bunch that are classified into milestones, which have to do with upcoming releases. And in particular, we have 25 open issues left for the next 10.0 release, which is upcoming, 1 issue for just after that, and 42 for some time in 10xx. So we figure out what to do based on milestones, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in my status report as well. And next up, we've got the libraries section of the state of CircuitPython, Blinka, and the libraries. So go ahead, Tim.
All right, thanks, Stan. This section covers all of the CircuitPython libraries. They are split into 2 main bundles. So we have the Adafruit bundle, which has 365 libraries in it, and we have the community bundle, which has libraries contributed by third parties, members of the community. That one has 165 libraries in it. So we have right now a total of 530 libraries that can support CircuitPython. In the Adafruit bundle, that's where the majority of the rest of the stats come from. Over in the Adafruit bundle, we had 6 pull requests merged this week by 5 different authors. A couple of the names that were either newer or less frequently listed here, or just have names that I didn't quite recognize being in these lists from week to week, were on the library side were J. Lunds and EJG Moorington. I think maybe I have seen the name before, but it's not up here from week to week. So thanks to those folks who might be newer or less frequent contributors. We had 4 reviewers, thanks to Brent, Lady Ada, Liz, and myself. In terms of the pull requests that were merged this week, they were all pretty much on the brand new side. The oldest one was only 2 days old, and the newest ones were 1 day. That leaves us now at the end of the week with 44 pull requests open. The oldest one is a draft that is getting up there at 1,040 days. The newest one is 11 days, actually, so not just 1 day like usual. In terms of issues over the past week, we had 3 issues closed by 3 different people, 3 new issues opened up by 3 people. So that leaves us with 721 issues right now across all the Adafruit libraries, and there are 3 currently that are labeled as good first issues, which you can find listed over at circuitpython.org/contributing. If you are interested in contributing to CircuitPython on the Python side of things, you should check out that website, again, circuitpython.org/contributing. On there, you'll find a list of open PRs and open issues. It's a great place to get started. Typically, the first place that we point folks towards who want to get involved is reviewing open PRs. So when you load that page, circuitpython.org/contributing, you'll see a list of those PRs. Those are just links over to GitHub. You can scroll through that list, find something that catches your eye, that interests you, that you've got the hardware for, or just some knowledge or experience in. Click through to GitHub, take a look at the actual proposed changes in the code. You can review for spelling, syntax, logic, anything like that. If you do have the hardware for whatever library that is, then you can try out the proposed change on the hardware. Leave a comment there on GitHub letting us know what you found when you looked it over. If you did have hardware, let us know how it went when you tried it out. If you get comfortable with that process and would like to get leveled up to leave official reviews, we can work with you to make that happen. If you would like to start contributing some of your own code, you can similarly on circuitpython.org/contributing. If you click over to the issues link along the top of the page, you'll get another list of links over to GitHub, but these ones represent issues. They do not have a proposed change yet. They're waiting for a person who's interested in actually submitting that proposed change, and that could be you if this sounds fun to you. So it's kind of similar. You look through the list, you find something that catches your eye, something that you're interested in or that you have some knowledge for. It is especially helpful if you do have the hardware, although maybe not required in 100% of all cases. Click through the link to get to the GitHub issue, read about what the issue is. This could be fixing a bug, adding a new feature or enhancement, maybe adding a new example code or something like that. And then you will submit a PR to propose a resolution to that issue. We do have a guide for contributing to CircuitPython using Git and GitHub. So if you need help with the version control or any of the checks or anything like that, we can point you towards the guide. We also have folks who are around throughout the week on Discord. So if you are trying to get involved, whether that's reviewing or submitting your own PRs and you're having trouble with any part of the process, version control or GitHub Actions or anything else, come say hi on Discord. Let us know what you're up to. We would be happy to help you out. We want everyone to be able to contribute no matter what your background is or what your pre-existing skills or knowledges are. In terms of library updates for the last 7 days, they are listed here. The new one for the week, SD Spin. And then over in the community bundle, I'll call out a couple updates. The CircuitPython button handler and the CircuitPython key manager are some third-party libraries that saw updates this week. And that's what we have for libraries. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Now I'll move on to the to the section about Blinka. Take a timestamp. Blinka is our compatibility layer for CircuitPython on single board computers like Raspberry Pi. So it isn't CircuitPython itself, but it's CircuitPython code that runs on an emulation layer that's a Python library. So in the past week, Blinka had 7 pull requests merged by 4 authors and 4 reviewers. There were 11 remaining open pull requests. There were 2 issues closed by 2 people and 4 opened by 4 people. And right now there are 156 open issues and there are 162 supported boards. And there was recently a little bit of churn about a change that caused some new problems, and that change was reverted. So if you're having some trouble with Blinka, try the latest release. Okay. Now we'll move on to the next major section, Hug Reports. Hug Reports is a chance to highlight folks in the CircuitPython community and beyond for doing awesome things. I'll start and then we'll go down the list of Hug Reports alphabetically. If you are text only or missing the meeting, I'll just read your notes when I get to them in the list. All right. So I'll start and I'll just give a hug to ADCC Bob, who did a prompt review of the MicroPython version 1.25 merge. Thank you, Bob. Next up is Tim.
All right, thank you. I have Hug Reports this week. Thanks to Retired Wizard for submitting a PyDOS app for the FruitJam OS. I was playing with that a bit over the weekend. I think it's pretty cool. And thanks to you, Dan, as well as NearDoc, for discussion and help resolving the issue relating to stubs releases over this past week. And that's what I have. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Okay. Next up is Tetrick, who's not here, and who gives a group hug. All right. Our next major section is status updates. this is our time to tell folks about what we're up to individually. I'll start, and then we'll go through the list as before. When I call on you, you can take a couple of minutes to talk about what you've been doing since the last meeting and maybe what you'll be doing before the next meeting. If we have a discussion that becomes a little too long for status updates, we can move it to the In the Weeds section, which comes after status updates. So I'll mention I finished the merge of MicroPython version 1.25 into CircuitPython. That's the latest MicroPython numbered release. There have been some changes since then, but not a new release. And as I mentioned, ADCC reviewed it and approved it. Thanks. As I also mentioned, we have 25 open issues for 10.00. ADCC and I are going to triage those issues soon, probably this afternoon. And so we'll see if we can reduce that number or at least assign those issues to various people to fix, probably mostly each other. So my plan for the next week is to fix some of those issues. And also, I'm going to change more of the 4 megabyte ESP32S3 boards to a larger firmware partition, in particular the ESP32S3 TFT, the reverse EFT, and the QtPy. And we'll see how that goes and I'll write up pages on the guides for those boards about how to update the firmware so the partition layout is correct. And then we'll see how that goes. We already did this for the ESP32S3, the plain ES32S3 Feather, and we'll do it for some other ones. Okay, so next up we've got Tim.
All right. Last week I looked into an issue with the stubs, the core stubs. They haven't been getting released onto PyPy for the last couple of releases. And I think we figured out what the problem that caused that was, and there is a fix merged in now. So for the next pre-release Alpha 8, I think it will be there. We should be back to having stubs released on PyPy. If anyone happens to hear this and is looking for stubs, you can still build them in the repo. They still work just fine if you build them that way and then install them, but you will have to wait until the next release to get the updated ones from PyPy. The next thing that I was working on last week was triaging some issues that were reported in various places with the newest versions of Blinka. As mentioned before, there were some changes in Blinka, and there are I think another new release today which reverts some of those so that we can work through some of the issues before we go back to what we were doing. So I did a couple fixes there, but that, like Dan mentioned, that should be resolved now. So if you are hearing this and you're still having Blinka trouble, the first thing you should try is get the latest and greatest version. And then everything else that I worked on was all FruitJam OS related. So I have been working on the actions in the FruitJam OS repo in order to set it up to check daily whether or not there needs to be a new release based on whether any of the projects that are embedded or any of the apps have been changed. And then what I am in the process of working on that is not successful yet is getting it to actually make the new release. And then also make the build and upload all the zips to the release. I think they call it assets or whatever, so it gets embedded on the release page. So it's close, but not quite working yet, and that is what I am in the process of working on right now. And the other thing that I did over the weekend and on Friday was some enhancements in the FruitJam OS launcher, the desktop environment. So I fixed the page buttons to work with the mouse. Those were previously only working with the keyboard, so now the mouse actually works as well. You can go between pages. I added hotkeys on the keyboard, so if you press the numbers 1 through 8, they'll take you to the different pages of apps. And then I added a config file that gets read that allows the user to disable or enable the mouse. And I have a couple other configuration options in mind, like screen size and some other stuff that might be good to put in there as well. And that's what I've been up to. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Okay. Next, I've got status updates from Tetrick, trying to help out with PR reviews as I have time. Take a timestamp here. And Also planning a co-app library that will add some standard IoT communication options, particularly helpful for communication over UDP or LoRa. And I didn't know what co-app was, so I looked it up. And I'll provide a link to a Wikipedia article which says let me go back up to the top. I was trying to find a link at the bottom of the article. It's a specialized UDP-based Internet Application Protocol for constrained devices. So that's interesting, and I'll look into that in more detail for myself. And that is it for status updates. Our next section is In the Weeds. Which is an opportunity for long-form discussions that come either out of status updates or that folks have identified ahead of time. If you have any In the Weeds topics, please make sure they get added while we're discussing other things so we're not waiting around to see if anyone has topics. So, Tim, would you be willing to read these? Because I think both are relevant to you and you might have immediate comments. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah, TechTrick has two sort of separate topics for In the Weeds. So the first one is there was some discussion around moving away from dynamic requirements, which is requirements.txt, and moving towards more static requirements, which are within PyProject.toml. This would allow folks using tools like UV to have dependency management work right out of the box. TechTrick says, I believe this is possible using some of the tools within Adabot, and I'm happy to do this. And I don't think any libraries actually require dynamic requirements, so the technical risk is very low. And yeah, to your point, my response I think would be if it actually does not break anything or cause any problems, I am fine with this. I don't personally use UV, so I don't necessarily understand the exact difference, other than it's like a different version of pip, as I understand it. It's a different way to install things with Python, and I guess it sounds like it supports different ways to declare your requirements. I don't have a full picture on like what makes requirements.txt dynamic and what makes the PyProject ones static. They're both just hard-coded in a text file as far as I understand it, but it sounds like there are different sort of features maybe that are supported within there. The kind of caveats I would say, like, I don't know of anything off the top of my head that definitely 100% does rely on requirements.txt, but a few things off the top of my head that I think are the most likely things that could are things like the Learn Guide bundler, which is not in a repo or anything, so we would have to probably engage the Learn folks about that to ask if anything to do with that. Specifically, it'd be more so for the libraries, I think. So the Learn Guide bundler, it can bundle projects from the Learn repo, and in that instance, I don't think there's really anything going on with requirements.txt. But the Learn bundler can also bundle things like examples from library repos, and in that case, I don't know. Again, I don't know that it does for sure use requirements.txt, but I could see a world where it might. So we would want to check on that. Make sure we don't break it. The screenshot tool, in a similar vein, there's like a screenshot tool that creates screenshots of both Learn projects and examples for libraries. Those screenshots get used on Learn. It's kind of the same boat. I don't know for a fact that it does use requirements, but I would not be super surprised if it turned out that it did, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't either. Just something to check on. And then I think that's probably the only ones off the top of my head that I think we definitely want to make sure to look into. The only other thing I would mention is I know a lot of our repos have, so we have a couple of different requirements files that can exist in the different repos. There's just the plain requirements.txt, which usually contains Blinka and then anything else required for that library. There is an optional requirements.txt, which can contain other things that, like, maybe you don't need it for all of the functionality of the library, but you need it for some. So I know there's a couple of libraries out there that have those. So we would need to make sure that this new paradigm with PyProject.toml kind of fits, like that this fits within that. And then the last one is docs. I know there's a docs requirement, or I don't know the exact name of it, but it's in the docs folder, I think, which has like Sphinx and some of the other stuff. So I don't know if that would be like aside from this, if we would just keep that one for the docs, or if that would get rolled into this, but that is something we would want to consider as well, I think, is make sure that all those different requirements files that we use today are going to work under the new way with PyProject.toml, or if they don't work directly, that we have whatever we're going to do in place of it. And then, yeah, pending kind of looking into all of that stuff, and especially if Tektrick is happy to do the actual work to do it, I would say I'm pretty okay with this. I don't have any other qualms with it. I did see the issue. I don't recall for sure what library it was in, but I think I saw the issue that probably spawned this this line of thinking. Somebody submitted something like this to one of the repos. I did see that PR go by, so I think that's where this might have grown out of. So yeah, I think that's most of my thoughts, and I imagine Tektrick will hear this in the future. So Tektrick, if you are, whenever you do get a chance to hear this, if you have questions or you want to discuss some more, feel free to ping me on Discord. I'm happy to discuss further. And then the next one, so the next topic here.
Can I just say one thing about this is that,
yeah, for sure.
I think that it's easy for people to read the requirements.txt right now without having to delve into PyProject.toml. So that's one reason why I don't know whether people do that, but it's sort of like, it makes it easy to see, well, what does this library really need right away?
Yes.
I mean, you could also look at the imports. So if we could make it easy to set that off in PyProject.toml, that's probably okay. But it's a kind of a nice place to look. That's all I would say.
That is a good point, because it's all self-contained in there, and there's like nothing else, right? So in PyProject.toml, you could imagine maybe having to scroll to find the right section, or you have to know the right headers for all of these different things, which is not impossible, but is kind of an extra barrier. So yeah, that's a good point as well.
And I would say, so Tektrick, if you're listening to this, I would say, like, this sounds very interesting. I would say open an issue about this. And Tim, would you say open this like in the bundle repo? Where do you think?
Yeah, I think the bundle is a good place for this. Because it kind of, like, ultimately it would touch every repo. So Adabot would be involved and everything. But yeah, we could even move the one. I forget exact, or it might have been a PR and not an issue, actually. So then it wouldn't make sense. But yeah, I think an issue on the bundle is a good next step.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So I'm done with that. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yep. So the next one that Tektrick has is here. So it says, if GPIOD is not installed with Blinka while using generic Linux, it throws an import error that this was not done. So if it didn't get installed, then when you go to try to import something from Blinka, obviously it doesn't have that requirement. So the import for Blinka fails. It raises an import exception or import error. However, due to the try except that we use for typing annotations, we catch that and then silently pass that error. If we ever we catch that and then silently pass this error if we ever have using digital in out within the type annotations for a library. I'm not sure if I read that part properly, but I will continue on to try to get the point. So this causes issues on single board computers that require type annotations to truly exist at runtime. So the crux of this issue, I did see this issue go by as well. The crux of this issue is it's unclear to me if this grew out of some of the other stuff with Blinka, since we did the update on Blinka recently and there was all kinds of other stuff going on. It's unclear to me if this is ultimately a result of that and is less of a concern now that we have reverted that, unless and until we go back to PyProject.toml in the future, in which case we'd have to cross that bridge again when we get to it. Or if this is like a completely separate deal that just happens, without regard to those recent changes. So I think that's one thing to look into. If this really is something that just was because of the change to PyProject.toml and that caused the installs and the requirements and stuff to not work properly, then I don't necessarily think this is worth working around on a wide scale. until or unless we do end up trying to go back to PyProject.toml and Blinka. But if it was not related to that, and this is a wider issue that exists separately from that, then I think this is worth looking into a little bit. The crux of it is, again, if you try to install Blinka and one of the requirements doesn't get installed, and then in your code it's trying to import things from Blinka, particularly things that are used only for typing, we use that try except block, which essentially voids out any errors. It just ignores any errors, because at runtime on the microcontrollers, the types do not get evaluated anyway, so those errors don't actually matter when the code runs on a microcontroller. But on a single board computer under CPython, we don't have that luxury. It does try to interpret the type annotations, and so if there was a failure to import something and then that something is used for a type annotation, it causes an exception when it runs. And the fix that was submitted in one of these repos essentially was just like try the import like usual, and then if we catch the import error, instead of just passing and not doing anything, it will actually set that thing that it tried to import to none. So if digital in out is the example, which it is here in the notes doc, the code would be like try to import digital in out. If that fails, then set digital in out equal to none. That way, during the type annotation, it's actually like compilable. It will run. It won't raise another exception. Obviously the types won't work. It won't be able to know what's associated with it in your IDE, but it will at least run. The couple more bullet points that Tektrick put here. He says we could change the warning exception in Blinka away from an import error. But it really is an import error. An alternative candidate could be OS error, since it relates to the pins. I would have to think on that one. I think the issue with that is that the import error, I don't know that we have the ability to change it super easily, do we?
We could raise the other error, but
I see. So
in Blinka,
try to catch import and then re-raise it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that would be equally confusing. I don't see this as I think this is confusing in a different way. So
right. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it changes the name, but it doesn't really change the technological reality, I think. And it would, unless one is a subclass of the other or whatever, I think that would necessitate us going back to all the libraries and changing our catch clause, which I would not necessarily like to do. The other bullet point here, it says we could go and patch the other libraries as well to make definitions and values that exist at runtime. This was the proposed solution for the instance where this issue was identified. Yeah, so that's what the one in the PR was doing, was setting it to none, like I was talking about. And so personally, from my perspective, I think setting it to none in the except block is fine. I don't necessarily see a huge need to go out and make that change en masse to every library all at once, since we don't really see this get reported that much. I mean, it came up recently, and I don't recall ever seeing the same issue before, which is what makes me think it could be tied to that update, which is where the first caveat I think came from. But if it's not tied to that recent update in Blinka, it is still a thing that nevertheless we don't really see getting reported all the time. So it doesn't seem like it's a huge problem for people. I think for the most part, when people install Blinka on a single board computer or on a generic Linux environment, like usually it works successfully and usually the imports are no problem. So this is a thing that usually people don't run into. If it's going to come up and it's going to be a lot more common, then putting a fix in does make a lot more sense than answering the same question over and over. But I don't know that it will actually start coming up that much. So my take is kind of it is a good fix and it does fix the actual problem. Setting it to none makes it so that you can run it on a single board computer. My take would be it's fine to just kind of do this as people raise an issue. So it's another one where I saw this issue go by. I don't recall which repo it was in. But this person proposed the solution, and in my mind, it makes sense. Like, take that solution, merge it, and then it's good. It works for that person's use case, and from there, we just kind of wait. If someone else has a different problem in a different repo, and they report the same thing, it could get changed there. But I don't necessarily see a huge need to go and try to be proactive and go to add like digital in out equals none, every time in every library where it's imported for typing. We could do that in the long term, and it would just kind of like resolve this issue everywhere at once. But I don't know how common this issue really will be, if it's going to be worth our time to do that or not.
So this happens if you're using generic Linux because there's no digital I/O. Is that right? Is that
my understanding is that it is only a problem when something went wrong with the install. So I use generic Linux and I have Blinka installed, and I can import digital in out and it succeeds. And it can
that's what I was saying. I would think generic Linux would install a dummy digital I/O, which would not work properly, and then you would get errors from that. I mean, I think let's see what happens. If the install is bad, then the install is bad, and that's just a problem. I don't really want to change hundreds of libraries for this problem.
Account for it.
Yeah. But I don't understand the issue quite. So I would have thought that the wrapper would handle. You could make the wrapper handle this rather than having it be at the library level.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement there. Is essentially it's not super 100% clear to me the real crux of like how this person got into this specific case on the device they were using, or how common that's going to be. But to the best of my understanding, I don't think that it is a super common thing. I think it's either they were using a device that happens to be weird with whatever its requirements are, or it was kind of tied to the weirdness that was in Blinka at the time when they happened to do it. I think those are kind of the two most likely things that went wrong here. I don't think this happens on very many devices, and I don't think it happens in the default case when there's not other issues in play. I don't think it happens under generic Linux.
Maybe this is, if we're talking, this is the issue I was already looking at in the DHT library.
I don't remember what library.
I just closed this issue because I said it shouldn't be fixed in the library.
Oh, I don't think it was that.
Okay, it's not the dark Ken one. Okay, GPIO import fix. Okay, all right. Yeah.
Actually, in DHT, I don't see.
Okay, I'll put in a link in the chat to this. And maybe we shouldn't discuss this further because this is even more weedy than we expected. So I closed this issue because it was fixed by a change in Blinka.
Gotcha. No, this was a different thing.
Okay.
Yeah, this one is a different thing. And I do. Okay. This one I'm a little bit more confident that this was related to the stuff from over the weekend.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. Well, we can discuss this in issue. Both of these, I think, is the right thing to do. Okay.
Yep.
So finally, thank you very much for discussing all those, and we'll wrap up now. And I'll just say our next meeting is next week, Monday, June 30th at our regular time, 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern and 11 a.m. U.S. Pacific time. And then in July and probably August, we're planning to go to a bi-weekly schedule because we're kind of short on meeting hosts, and also attendance has been low. So we may try bi-weekly for the summer. And then when school starts up again, we will go back to weekly. And that's it for today. Anything else I should know about before I completely finish? All right. Thank you, everyone. Remember, you can find this meeting on YouTube later this afternoon, and you can look at the meeting notes for next week's meeting on CircuitPython Dev channel on the Adafruit Discord. And I'll stop recording.